Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Braja Jananjana Jashodanandana Braja Jananjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Braja Jananjana Jashodanandana Braja Jananjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Srivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shishmad Vaisharana Arvind Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Golokananda Bhagwan Ki Jai Kali Pavanavata Shri Nitai Gauranga Deva Ki Jai Hari Nam Sankirtan Jagya Ki Jai Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Shri Sri Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol Hare Krishna. So we will carry on with the discussion on the fourth chapter, third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday we discussed up to text 28. Yes. So we come to the point where we shall be discussing where Parikshit Maharaj speaks in this regard, while Sukadeva Goswami is narrating to Parikshit Maharaj about the dealings of Vidura with Uddhava after the departure of Krishna. I hope you can situate this very nicely. So we will read from text 29. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayham Dadati Sapadandikam Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shannavari Paschatari Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Shri Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet. Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seva Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So we continue with our study of the unit 8 of the Yamayachi program of the Bhakti Vaibhava under the auspices of Bhaktivedanta Academy. So this is now the last 6 or 7 verses of this 4th chapter entitled Vidura Approaches Maitreya. Raja Uvacha Nidhanam Upagateshu Vrishibhojesva Adhiratta Yuthapa Yuthapeshu Mukhyai Satugatang Avasistha Uthavo Yat Dharirapi Tatyaja Akritim Triyadhishaha. The king inquired, at the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the free worlds, Sri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasty, who were the best of the great commanders, why did Uddhava alone remain? So, who is asking the question? You can mute, Rasavan Prabhu. Yeah. Who is asking this question?
I think Parishit Maharaj.
Yes, Parishit Maharaj is asking this question to Sukadeva Goswami.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So he is very clear in his questions. He said, after the disappearance, or rather the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the free worlds, Sri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties, who were the best of the great commanders? Why did Uddhava alone remain? Why did Uddhava alone remain? So, can someone read the purport for me?
Krishna Prabhu. Is it proper for text 29?
29, yes.
Okay. 29 or 28?
29.
Okay. Purport. In this verse, the word Siam is very significant in relation to Lord Sri Krishna leaving his body.
Prabhu, it's 28.
It's 28, okay. Okay.
28.
Yes. Because we've never read it, the purport. Okay. Okay. According to Sri Jiva Goswami, Nidana means the transcendental abode of the Lord. Ne means the highest, and Danam means opulence. And because the abode of the Lord is the highest manifestation of transcendental opulence, his abode can therefore be called Nidanam. Apart from the grammatical elucidation, the real purpose of the word Nidanam is to indicate that all the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasty were direct associates of the Lord. And after the end of his pastimes, all the associates were dispatched to their respective positions in the transcendental abode. Srila Viswanatha Chakravarti Thakur elucidates the meaning of akritim as pastimes. A means complete, and kritim means transcendental pastime. Since the Lord is identical with his transcendental body, there is no question of his changing or quitting his body to act in accordance with the rules and customs of the material world. The Lord seems to take his birth or leave his body, but the pure devotees of the Lord know well the actual fact. It is necessary, therefore, for the serious students of the Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of the great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Visvanatha Chakrabarti. To others who are not devotees of the Lord, the comments and explanation of such acharyas may appear to be grammatical jugglery. But to the students who are in the line of disciplic succession, the explanations of the great acharyas are quite fit. The word Bhagat Kesu is also significant. All the members of the Krishna and Boja directly reach the abode of the Lord. Other devotees do not reach the abode of the Lord directly, but the pure associates of the Lord have no attraction for the opulence of any planet of the material world. Sometimes, due to inquisitiveness, devotees who are to be promoted to the abode of the Lord have some attraction for the opulence of the higher material planets above the earth, and thus they desire to see them while going up to the perfection. But the Vishnu and the Boja were directly dispatched because they had no attraction material planets. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur also suggests that according to the Amara Kusa dictionary, Akriti means signal. Lord Krishna ordered Vidava by signal to go to Badarika Ashram after his departure, and Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead or to the abode of the Lord. That was the cause of his remaining alone, even after the departure of the Lord from the face of the earth. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So it's giving a little bit of the tattva in terms of understanding the end of pastimes of the Supreme Lord and how he arranges everything so that it is clearly understood why he actually makes everyone leave after his departure. So if we try to understand that, would it be the same thing wherever he did his pastime? Yes, because whenever Krishna appears, he appears with his Sangha, Upanga, and Ashtra, just like Lord Chaitanya. In that verse, Krishna Varanam Trisha Krishnam Sangopangastra Parshadam Yagnai Sankirtana Prayerijanti Sumedata. That Krishna appears because of when he appears with his associates, with his Ashtra, with his Upanga, with his associates, with his paraphernalia, and also with his weapons. But at the same time, he appears with his associates. In the case of Mahaprabhu, 5 main associates are listed, and the others in Gita Ganesh, Dapika, Prabodhananda Saraswati, at least all the other associates of the Lord, and what is their position. So when the departure is organized, he actually, because they were here living in a princely state in the Nidhanam, which means Ni means highest, Dhanam means opulence. So the Dwarka Dham was of the highest opulence, and the Vishnu and the Bhoja dynasties were being direct associates of the Lord. And after the end of his pastimes, they were all dispatched to their respective positions in the transcendental abode. Right? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he illustrates the meaning of akritim as pastimes. It means complete, and kritim means transcendental pastimes. But the Lord, he arranges that so there is no separation, intense feeling of separation, if they are not meant to actually always have the sarupya in the presence, or shalokya, or sashti in the presence of the Lord. then obviously they will actually be always in that situation according to their level of engagement in service with the Supreme Lord. So he arranges that. So for the, it is important that these commentaries come from Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So the non-devotees can never understand this, right? So actually this purport that Prabhupada has very nicely explained, he's derived this purport mostly from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also suggests here that he signals the opulence is going to be wounded up. So even then Krishna, he arranges for the disappearance of his whole opulence. You know, he makes an arrangement that the whole city of Dwarka is drowned. It's quite interesting that first he dispatches and the city of Dwarka disappears. So what was seen, just like in home of Vrindavan, we can see certain things with our eyes, but the other subtle parts of the dham are not manifest to the non-devotee. But the Goswamis, they actually see all the different Vrindavan, the Golok Vrindavan Dham, because they were associates of the Lord. They had immediate experience of everything. And we don't have immediate experience of everything. We have some experience of it manifesting in the physical world. Yeah? So Krishna, he arranges. Yeah? So what he did is he dispatched Lord Krishna, he asked Uddhava to signal to go to Bhadrik of this departure. And Uddhava, as a pure devotee, will carry out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead or the abode of the Lord. That was cause. What was the cause of this, his remaining alone? So he asks, what was the cause of his remaining alone? So Krishna has a mission when he appears. So let us read through. You know, so Srishuka Vacha, Brahma Sapa Padeshena, Kalinagmoga Vanchitha, Samritya, Swakulam Spidam, Tyaksham Deha, Achindayat. So Shukadeva Goswami, he replied, my dear king, the cursing of the Brahmanas was only a plea. But the actual fact was the supreme desire of the Lord. So it was just a plea, it was an arrangement of Krishna that the Brahmanas cursed that Sambas will give birth to an iron rod, and the iron rod was destroyed and then thrown by the sea, and then some of it came and became part of the bamboo sticks that was used to fight among themselves, and so on and so forth. So he thought to himself as follows. Let's see what he says. So we read the purport. In this verse, the word taksham is very significant in relationship to Lord Sri Krishna leaving his body. Tyaktva means to abandon. Tyakshan, to leave his body. Since he is eternal form of existence, knowledge and bliss, his body and his self are identical. Right? So sometimes we say self. Can anyone explain to me the difference between the self and the soul? We say science of self-realization. We don't say science of soul realization. Is it the same thing? Yes, Prabhuji? We're talking in relationship to us, not in relationship to Krishna.
How to express it? I'm thinking something in my head. But Rastavan Prabhu can go first. I'm trying to.
Okay. Krishna Prabhu. Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, my little understanding is that with the self and the soul, there's no difference actually. But since we are manifested souls, mainly the Jiva Atmas, we need to realize ourselves And it's just like realizing your own yourself as soul. But for the Lord, He's different from us, though we are emanations from Him.
So he is self-same. Krishna appears in the
Yes.
self-same form. Means that he is self and he's in himself is the same. But our self and our soul is not the same. So I'll leave that to you as an exercise. Try to find out in Vedic literatures what is the meaning of Atma and self, and come back with this next week. That's your exercise. You're understanding this. Let's move on. So his body and his self. So you understand the thing is, what is the difference between the self? The Atma sometimes is used to describe many things. And then from there on, you can understand what is the self. So put that as an exercise. Very basic. We never ask these questions, but it will show a depth of our understanding. So we'll leave that as an exercise for you next week. So we carry on the reading. His body and his self are identical. Therefore, how is it possible that he would leave his body and then disappear from the vision of the world? There's a great controversy among the non-devotees or Mayavadis about the mysterious disappearance of the Lord, and the doubts of those men with a poor fund of knowledge have been very elaborately cleared by Srila Jiva Goswami in Sri Krishna Sandarbha. So apparently, Arjuna, he carried out a kind of funeral rites for the Supreme Lord's transcendental body. But that is not something we discuss among devotees even, because it is considered to be very sad. So we will leave that topic. But then Mayavadis will say that Krishna was killed by the arrow of a hunter, and so on and so forth. But Jiva Goswami explained all of this very elaborately. So according to Brahma Samhita, the Lord has many forms. It is stated in that the Lord has innumerable forms. And he appears with the vision of the living entities as Lord Krishna actually appeared. All such forms amalgamate with him. So interesting that all other forms amalgamate with Sri Krishna when he appears in this form. Besides all these infallible forms, he has this universal form which we know, as manifested before Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Here in this verse, the word spitam is also used, which indicate that he left his gigantic universal form called the Virat Rupa, not his primeval eternal form, because there's hardly any possibility of his changing his form of Satchidananda. So what form did he leave? Which indicate that he left his gigantic universal form called the Virat Rupa. So which means the Virat Rupa is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord within the material elements. That's a form he left. It's a lot of interesting points in it. Not his primeval eternal form, because there's hardly any possibility of his changing his form of Satchidananda. That form doesn't change. But when he manifests in this form of Krishna, other forms that will perform other pastimes also appear with him. That's Prabhupada is saying. This simple understanding is at once realized by the devotees of the Lord. We can understand and accept that, because we know the nature of our Lord, the transcendental qualities and the wonderful, powerful character of our Lord. So we can accept that, but can other people accept that? No, they have difficulty in accepting this, because they can only see the Lord in material as a material manifestation. But we can understand the Supreme Lord to be more than just a material manifestation. He can also be in its one body of Lord Sri Krishna, transcendental body of Lord Krishna, a combination of all the other incarnations in it with him, because they all come from him anyway. So this simple understanding we can understand, but the non-devotees cannot understand this, right? So this is due to the defect called the cheating propensity. So we know that. Why? Because they have an attitude of not knowing, but then they will cheat. So by practical experience also, it is seen up to the present day that the Lord's transcendental form is worshipped by devotees in different temples. And all the devotees of the Lord actually realize that the form of the deity in the temple is non-different from the form of the Lord. This inconceivable performance of the internal potency of the Lord is described in Bhagavad Gita 7:25. Naham prakasha sarvasya Yogamaya Samavrita. The Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to everyone. So the Lord will not give the intelligence or the vision for others to actually understand him if they're not devotionally inclined towards him. So that's what he says in this text 725, right? So the name and form of the Lord cannot be perceived by the material senses, right? We know that he cannot be perceived by the material senses. But when he appears within the vision of the mundane people, he assumes the form of the Virat Rupa. This is an additional material exhibition of form and is supported by the logic of a subject and its adjectives. In grammar, when an adjective is taken away from the subject it modifies does not change. Similarly, when the Lord quits his Virat Rupa, his eternal form does not change, although there is no material difference between himself and any one of his innumerable forms. So in the 5th canto, it will be seen how the Lord is worshipped in different planets in his different forms, even now, and how he worshipped in different temples on this earth planet. So the Lord is present in the different temples. He's present in the different forms. He's present in his different pastimes. And we learned in the previous verses, his Paramam Sthitim is the Lord manifesting through his transcendental pastimes, which is the most important, which is what Uddhava realized more than anyone, and more than anything, and even more than Maitreya realized. So, so Prabhupada is making a point here that if people try to sort of try to come to a logical conclusion about what was the body that was left behind, then Prabhupada is giving an answer here by quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, right? And so can you please allow me to share? Okay, let me read you this. Okay, it's a little bit more direct. So, the Lord, whose desire cannot be made amogha, useless by time, thought of withdrawing his clan by that means. He thought of giving up a body which was spread beyond its limits, pitam. What is that? A body that was spread beyond its limit is actually the Virat Rupa. So he thought of giving up a body. What body he gave up was a spitam. That is a body that was spread throughout the universe, which is a Virat Rupa. So though his eternity, knowledge and bliss is confined to his Swarup, so this is the eternity, the Sat, Chit and Ananda, is confined to his Swarupa, which means Swayam Rupa, his original eternal form. It was now overextended in the sense of being visible to the eyes of the people in the material world. So this is a very, very complex bit of tattva to understand. So when he is visible to the world, then he is extending himself in the Virat Purusha form. That's what it says here, Spitam. And Prabhupada takes this word Fitam, and in this purport, this is from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he describes this. But we can understand that Krishna can manifest anyhow he wants. But to make it acceptable for those who have faith in the material form of the Lord, this is explained. Though his eternity, knowledge, and bliss is confined to his Swarupa, it was now overextended in the sense of being visible to the eyes of the people in the material world. And this is what he removes, or he leaves behind. This is what he removes, sorry, that form that was visible. There is a following rule. Savisheshana vidinishedho visheshanam upashankramata sati visheshya badhe. Statements of affirmation and denial change the meaning of their particular descriptive elements. Though this is a little bit of nirukti, explanation of Sanskrit grammar, right? But we leave that. And this is Nyaya Prakrita Tatparya by, we leave that. The word Tyakshan should follow this rule, acting as a descriptive, not as a main subject. So here, actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti tried to explain. Let me read here. For example, one can say Chaitra was a king. Giving up the body, he burnt it. Listen to this, an example. For example, one can say Chaitra was a king, but giving up the body, he burnt it. So how can someone who give up the body burn his body? Let us understand this. The body refers to that of his wife who had died. Since it is impossible that he die and burn his own body. So the body refers to that of his wife who had died. Now, in the present verse, Tyakshan Deham cannot mean that the Lord gave up his body and died, since his body is full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Thus, Mahapurana states the following. Sarve nitya shashratascha deha tasya paramatmanah hanopadana rahita neva prakritija kochit paramananda sadoha janamatrascha sarvatha. All the forms of the Lord are eternal, appearing constantly within the material world. With bodies of Paramatma, which is bodies of Paramatma means Shirodakshai Vishnu, without any destructive elements made of Prakriti. So if you don't have descriptive elements made of Prakriti, how is going to leave a body that will look like body of Prakriti? So this is confirmed in Madhava's commentary, in which he quotes Vasudeva Sankarshano Pradumna Nirudha Hangsho Matsya Kurma Varahana Shinga Vamana Ramo Ramo Rama Ramo Rama Krishna Buddha Kalki Raham. And then he goes on, I am Vasudeva Sankarshan Pradyumna Niruddha Hangsa Matsya Kurma Varahana Shinga Vamana Rama Parushuram Balaram Krishna Buddha and Kalki. I have hundreds and thousands of forms in this world. I am infinite. These forms are not born, nor do they die. They're eternal. See that? They are not conditioned, nor do they become liberated. Because they're not conditioned, there's no need for these transcendental body of the Lord in different forms to be actually liberated. All of them are complete, ageless, and deathless, full of highest bliss. This is the meaning of Govinda Sachidananda Vigraha. So Govinda is an eternal form of knowledge and bliss, seated under a desire to enter Vrindavan. That is actually the meaning of Govinda. So it goes on to explain that the Lord, having shown his form, the center of attraction for all eyes, then he took that form and disappeared from the men who had not performed austerities and had not attained the Lord's mercy. Therefore, they could not actually see him, and they were continually craving for the vision of the Lord. Lord Sri Krishna lives eternally among the cowherd men and the Yadavas, and is conclusively both the son of Devaki and Jashoda. He is the guide of the Yadu dynasty and the cowherd men, and his mighty arm secures everything inauspicious in Braj, Mathura, and Dwarka. By his presence, he destroyed all things inauspicious. His blissful, smiling forms always increases the desires of gopis of Vrindavan and women of Mathura and Dwarka. So there are many statements in the Shruti and Smriti showing that the Lord has an eternal form. So this is very detailed, explained by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur here. Thus, if we take this verse to mean that Krishna gave up his body, it does not recognize a contradiction to previous and later statements. So this is a little bit of a Sanskrit grammatical presentation, so to understand this. So it is not so easy to understand in what form Krishna lives and why does he appear to leave his body while he's being shot by an arrow. You have to go into a whole tattva discussion to understand this. So if the reading is nunam instead of svitam, it means certainly nu, less, anam, and modifies body deham. But actually, he actually gave up the body of the earth to the devata like Brahma for protecting. So what does it say here in the last part? Let me read. So now to have Narayan again return to Vaikuntha, he separated Narayan from his own body. According to the Sandarbha, the phrase means giving the body of the earth, deham, to the devatas, like Brahma for protecting, which means that very confusing, but nevertheless, try to make a point of reading this over and over again, and Krishna will bless us with knowledge. So, but the one thing we can take from this is that Krishna is present within the Virat Purusha, Rupa, the form of Virat Purusha, even though it's not considered one of his eternal form. He's present by infusing his energy into it. And he leaves that behind for all to think. Okay, he's gone, but he's not there. But at the same time, his Narayana form, which is manifested from Sankarshan, which he manifests in Vaikuntha Lok and Dwarka and everything, he takes that away. So please read. If you do not understand, do not mind so much. But Krishna, he leaves. Okay, so we will carry on with the text 30. Now I shall leave the vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhava, the foremost of my devotees, is the only one who can be directly entrusted with knowledge about me. So that's what he does. Now I shall leave the vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhava, the foremost of my devotee, is the only one who can be directly entrusted with knowledge about me. So he gives that transcendental knowledge to Krishna. So to Uddhava. So imagine if someone did not understand how Krishna is preparing to actually wind up his pastimes, do not understand the Paramam Sthitim, the higher transcendental nature of the Lord in his pastimes, he may give the wrong information to the whole world. And that's what Prabhupada is trying to point. So therefore he chose Uddhava, who was close to him. And had it given that kind of understanding and knowledge to Maitreya, maybe there would be a different understanding. Right? So it goes from few verses that you studied before. Yes, Prabhuji, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu, for this. This point you were trying to explain is actually a deep one because it relates to the Lord's appearance. And in summary, for a layman's understanding, could we say that the Virat Rupa, which is the form that Krishna lives, could we, in a layman understanding, let's make it simple, that just like Krishna enters into the multi when we do prana prashista, it is Krishna's element, but is invited by his pure devotees, he comes into that form. Then when, at some point,
yes, it's non-different than Krishna, but still in material elements. But then when we say that part of the Virat Rupa means part of the material elements, but at the same time, everything that is touched by Krishna becomes spiritualized. There's a description in the 12th or 14th chapter of Krishna blowing his conch shell. And when he blows his conch shell turns the color of his lips, which means that he becomes completely, and then he puts it down and then he goes back to being normal. So anything in touch with Krishna becomes transcendentalized. But doesn't mean that when Krishna actually leaves what behind is called as Pitam, which is Prabhupada's description of Virat Purusha, Virat Rupa, doesn't mean that Krishna has stopped being the Virat Purusha in the manifestation of the universe, which is laid out in a subtle form on his body as Virat Rupa. He's also there. So yes, the example of the deity, I think it's a good example to follow. I agree with you. Makes you understand it better. But these things cannot so easily be understood by logic and reasoning, but some logic is there and we can understand that.
thank you.
So in this verse, Jnanam Madashram is significant. Transcendental knowledge has three departmental divisions: knowledge of impersonal, knowledge of all-pervading supersoul, and knowledge of personality of Godhead. And this is 1 to 11. The understanding of the absolute truth in three different stages. Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam adgyanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabdyate. The supreme absolute truth can be understood in 3 stages, as Brahman, as Paramatma, and Bhagavan. That's what these first 3 lines mean. So out of these 3 understanding of the absolute truth, 3 stages of the understanding of the absolute truth, the transcendental knowledge of the personality of Godhead has special significance, and it is known as Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam, specific knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This specific knowledge is realized by pure devotional service and no other means. Bhaktyamam na vichanati yavan yaschasmi tattvata. Only person engaged in devotional service can factually know the transcendental position of the Lord. Uddhava was considered to be the best among all devotees of that time. So therefore, he was directly instructed by the Lord's grace so that people might take advantage of Uddhava's knowledge about the disappearance of the Lord from the vision of the world. This is one of the reasons why Uddhava was advised to go to ashram. So Prabhupada now makes it very clear. Why? Why? Because he is making it very clear that now Uddhava could understand his disappearance clearly. So therefore he asked him, okay, you can explain everything. So this is one of the reasons, special dispensation, because here in this form, Krishna has appeared as his original form. So not to leave any doubt as to where he is, how he appears, and how he winds his pastimes. He leaves his best ambassador, which is Uddhava. Okay, so this is one of the reasons he was advised to go to Badrikashram, which is Badrinath, where the Lord is also personally presented by the Narayan deity. One who is transcendently advanced can gain direct inspiration from the temple deity. And thus a devotee of the Lord always takes shelter of a recognized temple of the Lord. So you go to one of the main temples and you take darshan. It's a very important thing. Like how much our temple in Mayapur and our temple in Vrindavan is having an effect on all the devotees who visit them. It gives transcendental realization because they're powerful temples, powerful deities. So text 11, Uddhava is not inferior to me in any way because he's never affected by the modes of nature. He may remain in this world in order to disseminate specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. That's why he stayed. Okay? So let's read. Anyone can read the purport for me?
I read.
Yes.
The specific qualification for becoming the representative of the Lord is to be unaffected by the material modes of nature. The highest qualification of a person in the material world is to be a Brahmana. But since a Brahmana is in the mode of goodness, to be a Brahmana is not sufficient for becoming a representative of the Lord. One has to transcend the modes of goodness also and be situated in unalloyed goodness, unaffected by any of the qualities of material nature. This stage of transcendental qualification is called Suddha Sattva or Vasudeva. And in this stage, the science of God can be realized. As the Lord is not affected by the modes of material nature, so a pure devotee of the Lord is also not affected by the modes of nature. That is the primary qualification for being one with the Lord. A person who is able to attain this transcendental qualification is called Jivan Mukta or liberated, even though he is apparently in material conditions. This liberation is achieved by one who constantly engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 12187, it is stated, Iha yasya hare dasye karmana manasa gira nikilazwa pi avastasu jivam mukta sa uchyate. Anyone who, by his action, mind, and words, lives only for the transcendental loving service of the Lord is certainly a liberated soul. Even though he may appear to be in the condition of material existence, Uddhava was in such a transcendental position, and thus he was selected to be the factual representative of the Lord in his bodily absence from the vision of the world. Such a devotee of the Lord is never affected by material strength, intelligence, or even renunciation. Such a devotee of the Lord can withstand all onslaughts of material nature, and therefore he is known as Goswami. Only such Goswamis can penetrate the mysteries of the Lord's transcendental loving relationships. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. How are you? Good.
Fine, Prabhu.
Great.
Thank you.
Very nice. So let us understand this. If you are in the modes of material nature, even in Sattva Gun, and understanding and really taking darshan of the Lord in his transcendental form is not possible. Because it is said here that Lord is beyond Sattva, beyond Rajas, Tamas naturally, but even beyond Sattva. When he is beyond Sattva, he is Shuddha Sattva or Vasudeva Tattva, which means that he is in his pure transcendental nature. And only one who can see him in his pure transcendental nature can understand and explain everything from that point. And Uddhava was in that transcendental nature. And the Shuddha Sattva is considered to be Vasudev's Sattva. Why Vasudev? Because you can actually see Lord Vasudev. So it's called Vasudev. Vasudev. So we can actually see Lord Vasudev in this Vasudeva Tattva. So the Shuddha Sattva is pure transcendental mode. It is a pure transcendental state of being. And because Uddhava was in that pure transcendental state of being, he could actually see the Lord and everything related to the Lord for what it is. And therefore he could explain. So who else was Krishna going to leave behind to explain? Someone of this caliber? How can he leave someone who is tempering with modes of material nature? So he leaves Uddhava. That's the main reason. When asked by Parikshit Maharaj, this is Sukadeva Goswami's answer. So he is Jivan Mukta So Uchyate. Why? Because by his action, mind, and word. This is an important verse from Bhagavatam, from Nectar of Devotion. Ihayasya harer dasya karmana manasa gira. Actions, mind, and word. One who can actually see the Supreme Lord in his transcendental existence. So any question on this? No? Yes?
Hare Krishna. Let me ask a question that bothers my mind on this. I've taken a note on this verse because it's very powerful. Srila Prabhupada is a powerful and powerful representative of the Lord. So he was able to spread Krishna consciousness across the globe in a short period of time in a dynamic way. In the Western philosophy, the Christians will say that Jesus is coming back. Looking at our ISKCON movement, looking at our challenges and our passion to expand the scope of consciousness, Papa even said that given the opportunity to make it transform the whole world, could we say that although there are many devotees, we don't have a very highly elevated and powerful representative of the Lord on the earth planet right now, which is why Krishna consciousness is the way it is in the world. Although there are many devotees, there is no doubt about that, of different levels. But could we say that we don't have that caliber of devotees who could be so powerful enough, or empowered enough, let me use the word empowered enough to be able to create that dynamic impact that we want to see in Krishna consciousness movement. You are muted, Prabhu.
Yeah, Krishna says, as you surrender, I reward you accordingly. So according to our level of surrender, the Parampara Shakti will be coming down through us. So we can proportionately do according to our level of surrender. Vaibhava was a maximum level of surrender to the point that he was almost non-different than Krishna. So Prabhupada was also like that. His level of surrender was that he is non-different than Krishna. And that's what the description of an Acharya is. Shakshad Haridvena Samasta Shastrai. So he had the potency of the Supreme Lord invested fully in him. Even though he was not the Supreme Lord, he is as good as the Supreme Lord, and he performed as good as the Supreme Lord. Then because there, the difference is in terms of Krishna doing it himself. He does it himself personally, and in terms of being an empowered person means that the empowerment, the Shakti of Krishna comes through the Jiva, and the Jiva does it. So this empowerment, if you understand the Parinama Shakti, there is always a little bit of hissing, and I don't know why. In terms of the empowerment of the Jiva, can you mute Salika Prabhu? If there's a noise and it's disturbing to speak. Yeah. So in terms of the empowerment of the Jiva actually is empowered, means that the Shakti of the Lord comes within him. So there's two things sometimes. Sometimes the Lord it comes as his incarnation, and sometimes he empowers. And when he empowers, it is still a Jiva, like Vyasadeva is still a Jiva, but is considered an incarnation of Narayan. How is that possible? Because he's considered an empowered incarnation. So is Vyasadeva Narayan or is Jiva? Hard to answer. But because the Shakti of the Lord, the Avesh, he becomes an Avesh, he becomes completely empowered. So he's considered the same as Narayan. And therefore he can perform the same as Narayan. So by understanding Vyasadeva, that answer can be answered.
Thank you, Prabhu. I have a follow-up question to that.
Yes.
And my last question is that Krishna fulfills the desire of his devotees who desire us to serve him, right? And my question is there a shortcut to come to this platform of being empowered? I remember when Guru Maharaj was leaving the planet, he knew he was going to leave. In 2003, when he came last to this part of the world, he came, and right from the moment he dropped, I was fortunate to meet with him at the airport in Lagos. And right from that moment, when he set eyes on me, he started repeating one thing. He said, I'm coming to give, at this time, empowerment for those who want to be better among you, to be best of what you can be in devotional service. And for those who want to become nonsense, I want to empower you so much so that you can become so much of a nonsense in your devotional life. And he kept on repeating this until when we moved from Lagos to Benin, then eventually to Port Harcourt, we had the festival. And when he was leaving from Lagos, I wanted to go with him to Lagos. He said, no, you can go with me. Every one of you should go back to your temple right from here. You wouldn't understand the kind of an empowerment I've invested in each and every one of you. When I come back again, and this is unique, this is one important thing. They said, when I'm coming back again, I'm not coming to relate with you, each and every one of you, as I used to in the past, coming to stay in one place. And then he said, I will come directly to each and every of your yatra to directly relate with you. And this kept on ringing in my head because it was such a powerful statement he made during that visit. So, and since after he left, I've been looking at these instructions of empowerment, and I'm trying to find a way. Sometimes I feel like running out of my body. I'm talking personally now, Prabhu. I feel like I'm not just what I'm supposed to be. I want to do something very uniquely, but I can't just get myself to do it the way I envision it to happen. So that's what I'm asking. That is the background of my question. So my question is there a way to jump out? Is there a shortcut to getting positioned for that kind of an empowerment to make a change in our present situation? You're still muted, Prabhu.
The more you can understand Krishna and become Krishna consciousness, the more you get empowered. 1855 answers the question. Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktyamam nabijanati. Prabhupada quotes it up there. Yavan yaschasmi tattvata. Tato mam tattvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. One can understand me as I am, as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. So that's empowerment, just like Uddhava. I'll come more specific to your question. So when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter the kingdom of God, or even being here, he can be Jivan Mukta Sa Uchchate, because he's using all his faculties to serving Krishna. So how does that relate to what you're saying? Is the empowerment comes from trying to be connected to the spiritual master, to the Supreme Lord, by having faith in both the instructions and the spiritual master and the Vedic literatures and the Supreme Lord simultaneously. So when you have no doubt that the instructions of the spiritual master, the Supreme Lord, and the Vedic literatures all together combined, and have firm 100% faith in it, then all the purpose of the Vedic literatures will be revealed. And therefore, by this revelation, one becomes empowered, one becomes a tool, one becomes an instrument in the hands of the Supreme Lord and the spiritual master. And it's not that if you did not take the empowerment in the physical presence of the Lord, the empowerment is withdrawn. No, the empowerment is there. I have personally experienced this in my own life. And even now, I can sense that, because he said one or two little things that I could not understand and I could not link up with my spiritual master. After he's gone, I'm realizing and I'm allocating, or we can allocate, or we can dedicate everything that's happening as an empowerment of a particular instruction he gave, which you're trying to follow the best. That empowerment will immediately be descending upon our humble self. So that empowerment is always there if you follow, even if you did not connect at that time. Because the nature of spiritual instructions, the nature of spiritual relationships, it pierces through the coverings of the material universe and links the soul to the spiritual master, and links through Paramatma naturally, and also through his instructions. So I agree with you very much that, and I'm saying that for all the other devotees who may not feel or may not have felt or feel that I missed out, and feel like maybe some lucky ones who were anointed with such and such services, power, position, and this and that. They got the mercy and I did not. I don't feel like that, because our services are all transcendental, if we want it to be. And we can keep on connecting to the spiritual master, even after having failed initially. It never disqualifies us. So the empowerment is there, and the avesh, the investing of the Shakti and the power to become spiritual and realize Krishna and the transcendental nature of our relationship with both Krishna and the spiritual master is always there. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for the answer. answered it. Although for the purpose of this class, maybe we can go on. But it's something deep inside of me because just sharing my heart. I've seen so many unimaginable things happening in my devotional life in the last couple of years, which I can't comprehend how I achieved them. There is no doubt. But I'm feeling that maybe probably I'm being an Oliver twist. I'm feeling that with the level of connections that I have with Guru, with Prabhupada, with the Parampara, I should be able to do something more than what I'm doing. So, and that's where I get a little bit kind of dissatisfaction because I feel that there is so much within the teachings, within the philosophy, within the template Prabhupada has put in place. But I feel I couldn't do more than I'm doing now. So sometimes I feel that kind of self-dissatisfaction. Even though, yes, I appreciate that so much is going on, but and so that affects me somehow. So that's why I'm asking the question. But thank you.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. We have to keep endeavoring more. We have to keep praying more, and we have to keep connecting more. And therefore, this I can understand what you're saying, that you could do a lot more. You could do an awful lot more, but it's not happening. But we should endeavor, and we should be humble, and we should accept, and we should pray. And sometimes it's painful for everyone. It's painful for me. Sometimes I feel, why am I still doing just what I'm doing? I should be doing a lot more for my spiritual master. Yes, it's kind of tough. It's even painful. I understand that. I am not in a different boat than you. I'm almost in the same kind of boat. But let's carry on. Let's carry on. There's a kind of surrender that doesn't happen because of sanskara. We have grunges that we still keep in the heart. So I will go on with this discussion. So you see why Maitreya was where Maitreya was, and Uddhava is where Uddhava is. So understand that. So it might take a little bit more time. So text 32. Evam triloka guruna sandhishta sabda yonina bhadarashrama ashadhya harimije samadhina. Sukadeva Goswami informed the king that Uddhava, being thus instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all Vedic knowledge. Sukadeva Goswami informed the king that Uddhava, being therefore instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all knowledge and the spiritual master of the free worlds, reached the pilgrimage site of Badrikashram and engaged himself there in trance to satisfy the Lord. You know, Shalika Prabhu, I feel the answer to this is a comparative appreciation of the Supreme Lord of Maitreya to Uddhava. Our case may be similar, that though the mercy is given equally to Maitreya and to Uddhava in this final pastime, or not final pastime, but in this pastime of the Lord, some of us are Maitreyas and some of us are Uddhavas. If you can understand the gist of my explanation. I hope you do. But I can understand exactly what you're saying. I hope that Gurudev and Krishna empowers me and empowers me to say more. Thank you. So purport. Lord Sri Krishna is factually the spiritual master of the free worlds, and he is the original source of all Vedic knowledge. It is very difficult, however, to understand the personal feature of the absolute truth, even from the Vedas. The personal instructions are indeed in order to understand the personality of Godhead as the supreme absolute truth. The Gita is the evidence of such transcendental knowledge in gist. One cannot know the Supreme Lord unless one is graced by the Lord himself. So Lord Krishna exhibited his specific mercy towards Arjuna and Uddhava while he was in the material world. So one cannot know the Supreme Lord unless one is graced by the Lord himself. So he exhibited his specific mercy towards Arjuna and Uddhava. Why Prabhupada used this word specific mercy? Arjuna was the recipient of the mercy in one way, and Uddhava was the recipient of the mercy in another way. So, undoubtedly, Gita was spoken by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to encourage Arjuna to fight. And yet, to complete the transcendental knowledge of the Gita, the Lord instructed Uddhava. You see, he empowered Arjuna to fight and empowered Uddhava to carry his message. Quite incredible. But he gave some message to all of us of the Gita, and then he gives further message to all of us through the Uddhava Gita, okay, which is the 11th canto, the Srimad Bhagavatam, right here. You see, yeah, that's the Uddhava Gita, which is Krishna speaking to Uddhava, and you see, and then you see Maitreya Rishi is there, and Uddhava is there. Krishna is sitting with his right leg, or right leg, you will see it there left, but for you, but he's a right leg on the left leg, and he's sitting under the young banyan tree. This is what we've been discussing, right? So just take solace in that. That's very sweet. My spiritual master was particularly fond of Uddhava. Breaks my heart that I wasn't with him. And I wasn't with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. I tell you a personal story. We are among friends, and I'll tell you. And it broke my heart. It hasn't been repaired. I wanted to go to see Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj in the USA, but I was in a lot of confusion myself here. So I did not go. And then one day I received this call, and I was avoiding him. I was actually avoiding him because I was confused. Why is he leaving? Because you may know, you may not know, because I'm among friends, and I will tell you. I was with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj the last time he visited Mayapur. The very last time he visited Mayapur, I met him, and he said, tomorrow we're going to Bhakti Vinod's house. Come along with us. So it was myself, I think, one other devotee, and Maharaj. I can't remember whether Srivas was with me or not, but I can ask Srivas to confirm. I'm not sure who was there, but I'm so not very clear about this incident. So next morning, we met in front of the gate, in front of the temple, and he said, oh, you're ready? Okay, let's go. So you know how Maharaj is, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So we took a rickshaw, and I sat with him, next to him. And there was his appearance day previously, and he asked me to be the MC for his appearance celebration, and I was there. So I was a master of ceremony for his appearance day, and then after, I don't know, before or after that. So we went to Bhakti Vinod Godruma Dweep, Bhakti Vinod Thakur house, which is one of his favorite places. He visits every time he goes. So we went across the boat, and then I was riding in his rickshaw with him. And then we went there, and he prayed, and then he came back. And then I asked, he said, we go and swim, Maharaj? He said, yes. I said, you swim? He said, no, I don't swim. So we were making jokes, and then we were rubbing Ganges mud all over his transcendental body, and he was swimming, not swimming, but he was bathing with us, and then he came. That was my last meeting with him. And then he came to Mauritius, and then I was still in Mayapur. And then one devotee was carrying him, and he wanted to talk to me. The devotee called me. He said, Maharaj is here. I said, and he said, oh, I'm in your country. You still? I said, yeah. And then I never saw him after that, never talked to him. And then it was a bit painful for me. And then he was in America, and I didn't want to see the videos or hear anything, because very, very painful for me, very painful. One day I got a call. I get a call from US, and Gurudev's on the phone. And then he said to me, I hope I don't cry. And he said to me, "Oh, where are you?" I said, "It's all right for you. You were just lying on the bed of arrows like Bhishma Dev. I was angry with him. And you want to leave, but what's going to happen to me? And you're preaching to the whole world, lying on the bed of arrows like Bhishma Dev and preaching to the whole world, but what's going to happen to me?" And then he said, "Well, your relationship with me will carry on through your service to the devotees in the West Africa." And then he said, "Now I've talked to you, I can leave." Because I was feeling, how can I leave without talking to you? And then he said, "Now please go and give a hug to your wife, Sumitra, and tell her it's from Bhakti Tirtha Swami." And I broke down. And he said, "Okay, you can carry on doing your service." And I understand Bhagavatam a lot more when I'm teaching and talking to the devotees in Africa, because I feel his empowerment. So we should not never minimize the empowerment of the spiritual master. I'm not his Diksha disciple. I feel him all the time. So we should be serious. Not in Africa, I'm going to be very blunt to all of you. It's not the physical situation of being close, not close, or visibly saying this, not saying this, being in this ashram and that ashram. We just have to keep endeavoring to be Krishna conscious. And Prabhupada and Gurudev and my Guru Maharaj, they are an incredible, powerful persons. And I'm telling you honestly, this was not just out from some coincidence that I was asked to speak about this, which I'm speaking to all of you. This is no coincidence. This is what we're talking about. This is no coincidence. This is my spiritual master, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, Uddhava, Maitreya Rishi, and Krishna arranging for us to speak about this. I don't think you can actually evaluate the importance of what you're talking about. This is not just Bhakti Vaibhava. No, this is not just Bhakti Vaibhava. This is really trying to understand empowerment, trying to understand how the Lord is present, how Uddhava is a representative of Krishna, telling us about his Paramam Sthitim, his highest performance of his pastimes, and the presence of Krishna within his pastimes, and understanding his pastimes and the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So,
You're muted.
okay, We can, I mean, it's our Yama. Yesterday I talked to my god brother, Bhakti Prem Maharaj, which he is a sannyas disciple of Guru Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj. And I was telling him about, we discussing this with the devotees in Africa, and I'm studying this deeply. And yeah, and I was talking to him about Uddhava's and the mode of separation of Bhakti Charu Maharaj from Srila Prabhupada. And he gave the Uddhava Gita talk before he left the world. And then he was talking about his own separation from Krishna and his own separation from his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, how he felt separation from him and he wanted to leave. But he stayed and did what his spiritual master had asked him to do. So our own spiritual masters have instructed us to do things. So we do. Now look at Uddhava's position. He was feeling deep separation from the spiritual master and he did what he had to do. So why was he on the way after leaving Prabhasha Kshetra, on the way, and he met Vidura? Because he wanted to go to follow the instructions of Krishna, who had asked him to go to Bhadrakashram. So he was traveling towards north, having left the southern part of India, come to Jamuna, met Vidura, and he was on the way north because he said, I will feel some mitigation of the pain of suffering from the Supreme Lord by following his instructions. So it's very purifying. This whole episode is very purifying if you can all relate it to your own spiritual master and to our spiritual master. It's no different, spiritual master is one. So Salika, I hope this gives some solace to you and to me and to all of you. Okay, so Prabhupada talks about very beautiful pastimes of Krishna here. Undoubtedly, I'm reading the second paragraph. Undoubtedly, Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, just to encourage Arjuna to fight and yet to compete the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. The Lord instructed Uddhava. So the Lord wanted Uddhava to fulfill his mission and disseminate the knowledge which he had not spoken even in the Gita. So Uddhava Gita is a continuation of Bhagavad Gita. It's Krishna's direct instructions to Uddhava. Right? Uddhava Gita. So the Lord wanted Uddhava to fulfill his mission and disseminate the knowledge which he had not spoken in the Gita. Right? Now he speaks in to Uddhava. The Lord wanted, so persons who attach to the words of the Vedas may not know from this verse that the Lord is a source of all Vedic knowledge. One who is unable to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by going through the pages of the Vedas may take shelter of one of the Lord's devotees, such as Uddhava, in order to advance further in the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Brahma Samhita says that it is very difficult to understand the Supreme Lord from the Vedas. So sometimes we have to take shelter of other devotees to understand even our own spiritual master and his guidance. And that's just the way of our parampara works. So let me read the next. So Uddhava, even though he was such an advanced soul, same almost as Krishna, he says, taking mercy on the great sages who lived at Bhadrika Ashram, the Lord authorized Uddhava to speak on his behalf. So he was speaking on behalf of Krishna, Uddhava. That's why he was left here. And what does Uddhava do? He actually leaves the empowerment. And Krishna actually says that I am instilling my whole energy into the Srimad Bhagavatam. He actually says this. He says, I'm actually instilling the whole energy into Srimad Bhagavatam I can be found in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So before he disappears, because Uddhava does ask him, he said, where will we find you after you disappear? He said, you will find me in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. He thought about it. And this is also explained in the Skanda Purana. Right? So we can find the Lord here. And look, we are finding our own spiritual masters by discussing these, right? So while present on this earth, the Lord executed many uncommon activities, even traveling space to bring down Parijat from heaven and recovering the son of his teacher, Sandipni Muni, from the regions of death. Right? Uddhava was certainly informed of the conditions of life on other planets, and all the sages were anxious to know of them. So Uddhava was aware of the creation, the whole transcendental realm, the Paramam Sthitim, and the appearance of the Lord in Dwarka and Vrindavan and everything. So he was left here to explain. He mitigated the separation of the gopis by being near Uddhava Kund as a creeper. And also he would come out and he would explain the pastimes of the Lord to the gopis. So it's so much is there. So please read through. Okay, text 33. We're still here. Only 5 verses. Our time is gone. But anyway, the wealth of the knowledge and the realization of Uddhava and our own comparative, minute realizations, all of us together, we can draw some more affectionate understanding of our relationship with Krishna and the spiritual masters. So it doesn't matter. So Vidura also heard from Uddhava about the appearance and disappearance of Lord Krishna. Right? The super soul in the mortal world, which is a subject matter thought after with great perseverance by great sages, want to know the appearance, disappearance. So Uddhava was narrating this to Vidura. So please read through 34. Dehanyasam chatasyayim dhiranam deinam vardhanam anyesham dushtakaranam dushkarataram pashunam viklavatmanah. The Lord's glorious acts and his acceptance of various transcendental forms for the performance of extraordinary pastimes in the mortal world are very difficult for anyone other than his devotees to understand. And for the beast, they are simply a mental disturbance. So for people in the animal state of life, they cannot understand this. So the Lord never reveals himself to jnanis and yogis. And there are others who, because of the envying of the Lord from the bottom of their hearts, are classified among the beasts. And for such envious beasts, the subject matter of the Lord appearance and disappearance is just simply not possible. Okay? So if you are against understanding the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord, then it's not possible for us to understand. Okay? So text 35. Atmanang chakuru shreshta krishnena manasekshitam dhyayangate bhagavate rurodha premavivalah. Understanding that he was remembered by the Lord while quitting his body. This is so sweet. So he says, now here, yes, it is text 35. Atmanam chakuru sreshta krishnena manasekshitam dhyayangate bhagavate rurodha prema vivalah. Listen to this. Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting the world. Who was remembered by Krishna? Vidura. Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly. Began to cry loudly means Rurodha Prema Vivala, like a baby, cries like a baby. Overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. So when Uddhava told Vidura that the Lord was remembering you at the time of his departure, and Vidura being in that incredible mood of wanting to know more about the Lord, and Uddhava tells him, Vidura, the Lord was remembering you at the time of his departure. Vidura broke down crying. And what was his crying? It is not a mundane crying. It was overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love for his spiritual master, for Krishna, who was visiting him in his house. Who was visiting him in his house when Krishna was going to Hastinapur? Krishna would go to Vidura's house, and he would refuse to eat at Duryodhana's house, and he would eat at Vidura's place. So he says, Krishna was remembering you, and he started crying like a baby. So it is said here, Dhyayang Gate Bhagavate, when he remembered about the Lord, remembering him who was spoken to Uddhava. And he said, Rurodha Prema Vivalaha. He started to cry like a baby. Vidura was overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love when he understood that Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, had thought of him as his last moment. I mean, Gurudev called me before he left and he said, now I can leave, I've spoken to you. And I broke down, and I'm a stupid idiot. You know, I'm no nobody. And Vidura was overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love when he understood that Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, had thought of him at the last moment. Although he thought of himself as insignificant, he was remembered by the Lord by his causeless mercy. Vidura accepted this as a great favor, and thus he cried. This crying is the last word in the progressive path of devotional service. So we may experience these things, and we may not take it seriously, but some purity, some purification, some grunges and anarthas disappear with this feeling. So this crying is the last word in the progressive path of devotional service. One who can cry for the Lord in love is certainly successful in the line of devotional service. So 36. After passing a few days on the bank, Kalindya Katibhi Siddha Aho Veer Bharatarshava Prapadhyate Swasharitam Yatra Mitrusuto Munihi. After passing a few days on the bank of River Yamuna, Vidura, the self-realized soul, reached the bank of Ganges, where the great sage Maitreya was situated. Remember the instruction? He said he wanted you to go hear this from Maitreya Rishi and hear more about this pastime of the Supreme Lord from Maitreya Rishi. I cannot be here and tell you all the pastimes, so he gave in him what the Lord had conveyed to him. And he said to Vidura, please, so Vidura stayed by the bank of the Jamuna after he met for a few days. And then he decided, okay, just the same as Uddhava, he decided, Uddhava, okay, leave this realm of Braj and go to Badrikashram. And for Vidura, go to where Maitreya was. He was in Haridwar. So Vidura goes to Maitreya in Haridwar to hear more about the supreme pastimes of the Lord, which is Srimad Bhagavatam. So he actually goes to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Maitreya. And here, the great sage, Maitreya was in Haridwar. And Uddhava goes Badrikashram. So this concludes this here. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th chapter, 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Vidura Approaches Maitreya. So I hope we've drawn some beautiful experience and understanding of separation by understanding the separation of Uddhava with the Supreme Lord, Vidura with the Supreme Lord, and Maitreya, separation of the Supreme Lord. and each other's separation, of course, of Vidura now will experience Vaibhava, who was the same as the Lord. So much is there in this chapter. Thank you. So, text 5, chapter 5. We have a few minutes, but can we? I have to go to the festival. Today's a boat festival, and it's by the sea, and the devotees arrange. Many devotees will buy tickets and go on the boat, and will take Radha Krishna in the boat, and all the sannyasis and senior Vaishnavas will go, and many devotees also, as many number of boats, maybe 10, 15, 20 boats full of devotees will be going around taking the Lord in the sea, in the lagoon, which is very nice. It's a unique festival in Mauritius. Nowhere else they do this. So we take the Lord out in the boat. So it's nice. So I will take a break because I will leave at 2 o'clock too. So please, I'm sorry and apologize to all of you that I only managed to do some 6, 7 verses.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Sorry. Thank you so much. Although it looks like a very few verses, but for me, it's like, although you seemingly have spoken just on a few verses, but they're not just few verses in essence, because the purpose of studying Bhagavatam is to remember the Lord and His devotee. And I think this particular session for me is very, very much appreciated. And thank you so much for the areas you have touched. Actually, until recent times, there is no how I remember Srila Gurudev without shedding tears. And I thought I have overcome it, but I couldn't hold my emotions today. But thank you so much. I really appreciate the sharing. Maybe other devotees have some questions or something to say.
Yes, please share your experience. We have a few minutes. Hare Krishna. Want to hear the other devotees.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'd like to thank you very much for. We'd like to thank you very much for today's lecture. It's unique in the sense that we could feel the separation, the feeling of separation that Uddhava and Vidura they had about Krishna living this material world. We felt the same also with the feeling of separation from our Gurudev, Bhakti Prabhupada, because during the course of the lecture, all of us could sense that we're always emotional, remembering our Gurudev, such a wonderful personality. So at least that gave us a practical experience of what it means as a feeling of separation due to love and affection. So I thank Krishna that we could have a Gurudev like that we put so much love, and it's a very wonderful experience. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes. When Uddhava was feeling separation, in the beginning, he was stunned. And he could not speak for a muhurta. You remember that? We discussed that. He couldn't speak. He was like, he had gone. So,
he switched off for some moment. He was off for some moment.
Yes, but he was in the spiritual world. So similarly, by thinking of your spiritual master in the spiritual world, you are there in your spiritual world with him. And he is there with you. And he is there with us. I would say with you. He's there with us, and thinking about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he's there with us, and because the whole principle of us being in devotional life is to remember Krishna, remembering the spiritual master and his instructions. And by the process of remembering, we are with him. That's why I said that being fallen means to forget. If you forget Krishna, we forget spiritual master, then we've fallen. Otherwise, we're not fallen. remembering our purification. Yes, Rasavan.
Krishna, my great Prabhu. Prabhu, in a nutshell, in fact, I lost faith with you for many years. And really, before I met you on this platform, factually, I started feeling dry in my spiritual practice. And so fortunately, by Guru and Krishna's arrangement, I had to meet you on this platform. So meeting you again is like a rebirth for me. Actually, by the close of these lessons we had today, I see myself rejuvenated. Keeps on with me always. But my wonder is that, when we met in Abidjan, the conference you held on the resurrection and reincarnation.
Librairie Nationale.
Yes. Was so much revealing that, in fact, we learned a lot from it. But I could see that you, over all these years, you didn't forget. And then as last I remember, you hinted on it. And it was a great wonder for me. So, Prabhu, now that I've met you, my fear is to get separated from you again. So please try and keep me a little more in your embrace. You are the mercy of Guru and Krishna and all the devotees for me. So I beg you and I plead with you, let me live always in your presence.
I never forgot you. I never forgot Ishita. I never forgot Kusha. I never forgot the brahmachari boy who was serving me, but somehow he's not there. And I never forgot any of you. It's always my prayer, because that was also because of Gurudev's insistence upon me. Thank you. So we'll see you again.
Thank you very much.
Wednesday morning. And we will just discuss the four. That'll be, what am I supposed to do now, Salika Prabhu? I'm supposed to give you assignments, so because the MIHE thing is new to me. I haven't read through, I haven't had time, but I can read through and see what I'm supposed to do. You have sent me the MIHE module assessment and everything?
Yes, I sent it to you the last.
To my email? Yeah. Send it to my email.
Okay, I'll you can share
no
your
WhatsApp,
email.
to my email, gitasanta@gmail.com. And then I will take it from there and see what is there to be done. But please read through and enjoy the reading, and be as soft as you can in your heart, and allow the mercy of Gurudev and Prabhupada and the Acharyas and Uddhava and Vidhura and Maitreya to come in. We're all persons, and they're all persons and want to interact with us. The only reason we think that they're not wanting to interact with us because we think they're not available. They are very available. Gurudev is very in contact with all of us, and Uddhava is very much in contact with us, and Krishna is very much in contact with us. They never leave us alone in this world. That's why they come. Why would they want us to be here? No, they don't want us to be here. They want us back there. Hare Krishna. Grandharaja Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shishinita Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. Arasavan, please encourage the audio devotees. Encourage the other devotees you all know to join the class.
Okay.
Those who take the Bhakti Vaibhava, fine. Those who don't take, come and hear together. That will be Gurudev. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Krishna.
Vanchakalpatarivascha kripa sindhu.
Yes, kripa sindhu.
Titarang pavane bhavo.
Vaishnavi Odama.
Hare Krishna.